Hello there. My name is Oba, and I lead the podcast for Leaders Circle. And I'm currently on a journey of developing my leadership capacity as an individual. And therefore, I started the podcast Leaders Circle. So, this series I want to start now is a book review series where I'll be going through leadership books and just be providing chapter by chapter reflections and reviews from leadership books I read. And I'm hoping that this inspires other people to also read and maybe also learn from my reflections. And the first book I will be reviewing is the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. And I think what I want to do with this is there are 21 chapters, and that means there are 21 laws. And my goal is to take one chapter per day, which is one law per day, and basically means I'm going to be reading 21 chapters in 21 days. So that's the series for this book. And I'm hoping I'm able to record 21 videos in 21 days. But this is just to keep things short. But my goal is to keep these videos short anyway. So for the first chapter, not to keep you for too long. So the first chapter, or let me just give a brief overview of this book. So this current one I'm reading is the revised and updated version, in case anybody wants to go get it, right? And the revised and updated version is different from the old version. It's the 10th anniversary edition. So it has a couple of additions and other things in the appendix as well. And John Maxwell basically also added some evaluation toolkit, somewhat of a leadership development plan in the book. So for each of the 21 laws, for example, Law 1, there are a couple of books that you might want to explore to develop yourself in that law. He did a breakdown for the 21 laws. So if you get in a copy, or advise you get this expanded and updated version or edition, for lack of better words. So let's get into the first book. So the first book is a first law. So the first law is the law of the lid. And in the law of the lid, he was describing the fact that our leadership ability is the lid, or it's the ceiling to our effectiveness, meaning that anybody who would be effective would need a leadership skill. And if you would be effective, your effectiveness is dependent on your ability to lead. I think the right word he used was your leadership ability is the lid of your effectiveness, right? So so basically the law is the law of the lid. And I think I particularly have three takeaways from this particular law. And I think the first one is leadership ability impacts your personal effectiveness. I'm reading a note actually. So leadership ability impacts your personal effectiveness, which basically safe to say that a person's ability to lead or a person's effectiveness in their day-to-day engagement is somewhat strongly influenced by their ability to lead. And my understanding of leadership is broken down to different modes. There's the ability to lead yourself, lead people, and lead systems in your organization, if you think about it that way. So when I think about the idea he's putting forth, your leadership ability impacts your personal effectiveness. It means that if your leadership ability is weak or low, you cannot be effective in whatever you try to do personally. You're trying to start a project, you're trying to start a passion project, trying to start something, whatever, trying to start a new habit. Your effectiveness in that thing you're trying to lead will be limited by your ability, your leadership ability or leadership skills. The other one is, and I think it's just me summarizing how he put it. So he said if you want to go higher in your organization or in the corporate space, you would need leadership. So the way I paraphrase it is going up the corporate ladder requires the need for leadership. So what that basically means is in our different organizations, we have different roles and at different levels. And if you want to go up that ladder, you want to get a promotion, for every stage you get up to go up, you would need leadership ability. You need to be to have leadership skills. You need to have a leadership capacity, and therefore your leadership ability would limit your effectiveness in the levels that you are going to or you're aspiring to get to. Therefore, you need to expand your leadership capacity so that as you begin to go up the career ladder, your corporate ladder, or grow in your influence, you then begin to also grow in your effectiveness. Because the higher up you go, the more you get to lead more things, and you get to lead more people. You get to have get responsible for bigger things. I think my 4 takeaways, and I think it's also paraphrased. So impact requires influence, and influence requires leadership. So he mentioned that there's your impact, being able to be a person of impact or to impact anything in your organization will require influence. And influence is basically, in another word, it's leadership. It's your ability to influence or to move things without pushing them, right? I think that's how I think of influence. Think telekinesis, being your ability to move things without touching them. And if you're trying to be a person of impact, if you're trying to be a person that is trying to get things done, implement change, implement big things in society, you would need to be able to influence people, influence things. And if you need to influence people, you need to have that leadership ability. So in summary, leadership ability is key, and it's what he calls the law of the lead, meaning that your leadership capacity limits your effectiveness. This is the first chapter. Looks good, and I think in summary, I think the story he gave that supported this was the story of the McDonald brothers, which is trying to remember Dick and Maury, if I'm not mistaken, and how that Ray Kroc came into the picture, how that the McDonald brothers struggled with scaling the McDonald business because their particular skill was at managing the business. They didn't know how to manage the business at the level at which Ray Kroc could do it, and that means that their leadership capacity was their limiting factor. However, someone came in, Ray Kroc, who was able to, in 4 years, go from 4 to 6 McDonald's stores to 100 in the United States, right? So it's to say that a person's ability or leadership ability basically could limit the level of impact, their level of influence, and also influence their effectiveness, whether it's personally and also in the organization. So this is the beginning of the book, and I'm looking forward to chapter 2, which I'll be sharing with you also. All right, thank you. See you in the next one. Bye.